It started with the kind of sound that instinctively tightens every muscle in your body. Shrieking, frantic, pounding against glass, and the unmistakable grind of a tow truck pulling something heavy and unwilling. I stepped out onto my porch, still holding the half-finished mug of coffee I'd been nursing since dawn, and followed the racket to the street. That's where I saw her. Melissa, my ex-wife, locked inside her silver sedan as Derek, the local tow truck guy with permanently sunburned cheeks, winched her car upward. Melissa's fists hammered the inside of the window, like she was trapped in a sinking submarine. Her face was twisted in a mixture of panic and fury, tears streaking her mascara into dark rivers. "Open the damn door. Stop this. You can't do this to me," she screamed, her voice muffled by the glass and the groaning metal. Derek didn't even look at her. He just kept working the controls. It was almost artistic, watching the scene unfold. She had boxed herself inside her own metal cage, doors locked, windows up, refusing to get out when she saw the tow truck approach. And now the machine lifted her along with the car, like some karmic crane game where the prize was a shrieking ex-wife. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't offer to help. I simply watched. And that was the moment I realized how far things had gone, and how far I had gone from the man I used to be. 3 months earlier, the morning of my 34th birthday, had begun with a kind of fragile optimism. I told myself, stupidly perhaps, that maybe Melissa was finally trying. She'd been distant for months. Our conversations were either too sharp or too rehearsed, and our intimacy had evaporated like spilled alcohol on hot concrete. But she'd said she had a surprise planned. A birthday surprise. I wanted to believe her. Despite every red flag. Despite the gut-deep suspicion. Despite the way she'd been guarding her phone as if it contained nuclear launch codes. Despite how little her parents, especially her condescending father, Martin, ever liked me, and how much they encouraged her to keep her options open. Still, I hoped. When she told me, "Come to my parents' house at 6 tonight, dress nice," I thought, maybe this birthday wouldn't be terrible. The house was already loud when I arrived, laughter, glasses clinking, that forced cheeriness families use when pretending everything is perfect. I stepped into the living room and instantly felt dozens of eyes land on me. Her whole family was there, her mother clasping a wine glass, pretending to smile, her father standing like a statue in the corner, her sister Annabelle, with her expression halfway between pity and discomfort, and Melissa, standing in front of all of them with a look I didn't recognize. Cold, certain, almost triumphant. "Everyone," she said loudly, "I have an announcement." Then she turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm leaving you, Carter." My ears buzzed, the room tilted, but she wasn't finished. "I've met someone else. Someone who actually appreciates me." Behind her, a man I had seen only once or twice, Ronan, leaned against the wall, smirking like he had won some game only he knew they were playing. Melissa held out a neat stack of divorce papers. "Sign them," she said. "Let's not drag this out." Not a trace of remorse, not a hint of hesitation, just the cold efficiency of someone taking out the trash. I looked down at the papers, picked up the pen she offered, and I signed. No shouting, no crying, no questions. A strange numbness wrapped around me like a cocoon. "Wow," someone muttered. "He didn't even argue." Melissa frowned, annoyed I hadn't created a dramatic scene for her family to enjoy. "Fine," she snapped. "Then leave." So I did. But the numbness burned away the second I got into my truck. Rage flooded in. Thick, hot, volcanic. I didn't know where to go, so I drove until my hands stopped shaking and ended up at the only bar open that late. I drank slowly. Not to forget. No amount of alcohol could erase what happened. But to quiet the animal inside me long enough to think. And somewhere between my second and third glass, a plan began to form. A dark, cold, beautiful plan. One that started the very next morning in the office of Larry Thompson, the sharp-tongued divorce attorney everyone in Briarville knew and half the town feared. Larry leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his teeth as I explained what had happened. "She really served you the papers at her family's house?" he asked. "During a birthday party," I replied. He whistled. "Well, if you're looking to play nice, you came to the wrong man." "I'm not playing nice," I said. And Larry grinned. "Then let's ruin her." The next days were a blur of action. Larry drafted counterfilings that were so precise, so aggressive, Melissa's lawyer called him a vulture with a law degree. Meanwhile, I collected everything: screenshots, hotel receipts she lied about, messages she forgot to delete from our shared tablet. Evidence of a long, sloppy affair with Ronan. But it wasn't Ronan I first ran into, it was Bronson. Ronan's older brother. A man who looked like a beer keg wearing sunglasses. He showed up at my temporary Airbnb rental, trying to smooth things over with the diplomacy of a drunk gorilla. "Look, man," he said, shifting from foot to foot. "Maybe we can, sort this. Melissa's been freaking out. You don't want to escalate." "Escalate?" I repeated. "Your brother screwed my wife." Bronson tried to shrug. "Well, yeah, but—" I slapped him, hard, on purpose. His head jerked sideways, and for a moment, he looked like he wasn't sure what planet he was on. "Get off my property," I said. He didn't move, so I slapped him again. This time more deliberately, like swatting away a fly that refused to die. Bronson stumbled backward, fell against the porch rail, and just stared at me. The door behind him creaked open a few inches. My Airbnb host, Mrs. Hadley, peeking out with a look of horrified fascination. "Leave," I said. Bronson finally listened, and I felt something dark and shamefully satisfying settle in my chest. A week later, I was done with temporary housing, done with the past. I found a 3-bedroom craftsman house on the edge of town, quiet street, big windows, a workshop out back that smelled faintly of cedar and motor oil. I threw myself into rebuilding old furniture, restoring scarred tables, sanding down forgotten cabinets until they gleamed with new life. It grounded me, gave me purpose. And that's when Rebecca entered my life. She showed up at a local flea market where I'd set up a small display of restored pieces. Her curly auburn hair bounced as she examined a vintage walnut desk, her fingers tracing the polished edge. "You made this?" she asked, looking up with bright hazel eyes. "Yeah, I fix things," I said before I realized how symbolic that sounded. She smiled. "I design things. Maybe we're occupational soulmates." Rebecca was warm, independent, funny. Nothing like Melissa's cold self-absorption. We talked for an hour, exchanged numbers, and from there, everything unfolded in a natural, steady rhythm. Meanwhile, the divorce proceeded, and it was brutal for Melissa. Larry had framed everything perfectly. She lost money, assets, and the pristine reputation she'd curated like a trophy collection. I bought a house with a huge yard. And then, at the county shelter, I met Max. A three-legged pit bull with a wide, goofy smile and a heart bigger than most people I knew. He became my shadow. And every time I heard rumors about Bronson facing IRS investigations for his creative accounting, I felt a dark, settled satisfaction. Life was rebuilding itself. Until Melissa came back. It was a gray afternoon when I heard the knock at my door. When I opened it, Melissa stood there, holding 2 suitcases. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, her expression frantic. "We need to talk," she said. "No," I replied. She pushed past me anyway. "My father's under investigation. Everything we had is gone. They froze our accounts. Ronan left. I have nowhere to go." "Not my problem," I said, pointing to the door. She hesitated, swallowed hard, and then said, "I'm pregnant." I stared at her. She placed a hand over her stomach, eyes wide with practiced vulnerability. "It's yours, Carter." "No," I said flatly. "It's Ronan's." "It's yours," she insisted. "Please, just let me stay. At least hear me out." Before I could answer, Rebecca stepped into the hallway behind me, and Melissa's face twisted into pure hatred. "You replaced me with her?" Melissa spat. "Her?" Rebecca stood straighter. "He doesn't need to replace you. He upgraded." Melissa lunged. She tried to shove past me, her nails reaching for Rebecca. Instinct took over. I stepped between them, forcing Melissa back. "Get out," I said. "No," she screamed. "Carter, listen to me. You can't throw me out like trash." "If you touch her again," I said, my voice low and ice cold, "I'm calling the police." She froze. For a moment, fear flickered across her face, and she ran. I exhaled shakily. My heart hammered, but I was steady. Rebecca's hand slipped into mine, trembling. And that was only the beginning. Melissa didn't stay gone for long. That night, after the chaos settled and Rebecca finally stopped shaking, we sat together on the couch, while Max curled up at our feet. The room felt eerily quiet after the storm Melissa brought with her. "Do you think she's really pregnant?" Rebecca asked softly. I rubbed my face. "I don't know. And until she proves anything, I'm not taking her word for it." "Would you want to know?" I hesitated. "If she is pregnant, and that's a massive if, then I'd need to know. And Larry will tell me exactly how to handle it." Rebecca nodded, but her eyes were clouded with worry. I pulled her into my arms, kissed the top of her head, and whispered, "She's not getting back into my life. Not in the way she thinks." Rebecca murmured something against my chest, her breath warm, her body tense. We fell asleep like that. But at dawn, another knock jolted me awake. This time, when I opened the door, it wasn't Melissa. It was her sister, Annabelle. Annabelle looked like the worn-out version of who she used to be. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. Her lips pressed so tightly together they were practically white. "Carter," she said cautiously, "can we talk?" I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so she wouldn't see Rebecca still sleeping on the couch. "What do you want, Annabelle?" She swallowed and twisted her hands. "It's about Melissa." "Of course it is. She's not doing well. Everything's falling apart. Dad's under criminal investigation, Mom's having panic attacks, and Melissa..." She paused. "She's convinced you'll take her back." A laugh burst out of me before I could stop it, sharp, humorless. "She cheated. She lied. She humiliated me in front of an entire house full of people. She left me for Ronan. Why would I ever take her back?" Annabelle's eyes softened. "Because she thinks you'll do the right thing for the baby." I froze. She saw the change and pressed on. I'm not saying I believe her. Honestly, half the family thinks she's lying. But she's desperate, Carter. Really desperate. That's not my responsibility. Annabelle exhaled shakily. She's still my sister. I had to try. Well, you tried. She's not welcome here. Before she walked away, she added quietly, she's not stable right now, and I don't know what she'll do next. I watched her leave, feeling a pressure behind my ribs. Not sympathy, not guilt exactly, more like a warning. Melissa was unraveling, and unraveling people were dangerous. The next days were a parade of unwanted messages and voicemails from Melissa. Sometimes she begged, sometimes she accused, sometimes she wept so loudly it distorted the audio. But the one constant was persistence. She stayed near my house, sometimes in her car at the curb, sometimes walking up and down the sidewalk, pretending to talk on her phone. The neighbors noticed. Rebecca noticed. And Max growled every time he heard the crunch of gravel outside. One evening, I stepped out onto the porch and saw Melissa standing under the streetlight, her phone clutched in her hand. She looked thinner, paler, eyes red and wild. "Carter," she said softly, "we need to talk." "No," I answered. She blinked, as though genuinely surprised I wasn't melting. "I sent you a message," she continued. "You didn't reply." "I read it," I said. "I ignored it." Her breathing hitched. "I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to fix things. I made mistakes, but I'm carrying your child and you don't even know that." I cut her off. Her expression twisted. "So, you think I'm lying about being pregnant?" "I think you lie about everything." That finally cracked her composure. Tears rose quickly and sloppily, like they were being squeezed out of her. "Just give me a chance," she begged. "We can talk inside, away from her." The venom in her voice when she said her was unmistakable. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. "Let me in, Carter. Please. If not for me, then for the No." That single word hit her like a slap. She stared at me, shaking. "Fine," she whispered. "If you won't let me in, then I'll wait." And she did. For hours. I watched from the window as she sat on the curb, arms wrapped around her knees, her car parked crookedly behind her. At some point, she started crying again, loud enough for Max to growl and whine at the sound. Rebecca eventually placed her hand on my arm. "You can't let her keep doing this. It's not safe. Not for you, not for us." She was right. So I made a decision. Melissa's car needed to go. Derek, the tow truck operator, didn't even ask questions when I called. He showed up the next afternoon just as Melissa had fallen asleep inside her car, her body curled across the driver's seat like a child's, her window fogged from her breath, her hair tangled, a crumpled tissue still clutched in her hand. I watched from my porch, leaning against the column, Max at my side. Derek maneuvered the tow truck into position with practiced efficiency. The hydraulic arms lowered, hooking under the car's frame. And that's when Melissa jolted awake. She stared out the window, confused, then horrified. "No, no, no, stop, stop, don't touch my car," she screamed, slamming her palms against the window. Derek didn't react. He simply kept working the controls. The car lifted, tilting slightly, and Melissa scrambled inside, trying to unlock the door, trying to shove something into gear, but it was useless. The wheels spun freely above the pavement. "Let me out!" she shrieked. "This isn't legal! You can't do this!" But the door was jammed by the tow rig's clamps. She had trapped herself inside the moment she locked the doors. Her panic escalated. She slammed her fists, kicked the dashboard, screamed at Derek, screamed at me, screamed at the empty air. The car rose higher, and Derek, unfazed, secured it in place. He glanced toward me. I nodded once. He gave a small nod back, climbed into the truck, and revved the engine. "Carter!" Melissa shrieked, voice cracking. "Please, don't do this. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant with your—" But the rest of her words were drowned out by the roar of the tow truck. Derek pulled away from the curb, Melissa still trapped inside the rising metal cage. Her hands pounded the window as the truck rounded the corner. And then, silence. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. Max nudged my leg, sensing the shift in the air. I stood on the porch a long time after the truck disappeared, staring at the empty street, feeling neither triumph nor regret. Only finality. The conflict was over. Melissa was gone. But her choices and mine had left a shadow I knew I'd be reckoning with for a long time. The street stayed empty for nearly a minute after Derek turned the corner, the faint rumble of the tow truck fading, like a storm moving off into the distance. But the quiet didn't last. Within moments, I felt the tension in the air shift, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. I turned and stepped back inside, locking the door behind me. Rebecca stood in the hallway, arms folded, eyes wide. She had watched most of it from the window. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now," I said. "She won't be back tonight." Rebecca leaned against the wall, exhaling. Relief mingled with fear in her expression. "She scared me, Carter," she whispered, "the way she looked at me." "I know. She hates me." "She hates herself," I corrected. "You're just the closest target." But that didn't erase the truth. Melissa's presence had become dangerous, unpredictable. And now that her car was gone, she would either break down or escalate. Max patted over to Rebecca and nudged her leg gently, sensing her distress. She crouched and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face into his fur. "I hate that she still has this kind of power over our lives," Rebecca murmured. "She won't for much longer," I assured her. "I'll talk to Larry first thing in the morning." The next day, Melissa didn't show up. No calls, no messages, no pounding on the door. Just silence. I updated Larry anyway. I told him everything: the confrontation, the attack on Rebecca, the endless stalking, and the car being towed with her inside. Larry didn't blink. "You warned her to leave. She refused. You protected your property and your partner," he said. His voice clipped and professional. "You're fine, legally." "Should I expect police involvement?" I asked. He snorted. "If she calls them? Yes, they'll want statements. But you've documented everything. And she has a history of lying and causing scenes. You're protected." "About the pregnancy," I added. "If she keeps insisting, then we request a DNA test," Larry said. "Court ordered. And child support will be based on that." "And if the kid's not mine? Then you owe her nothing," he said. "And she knows it. Which is why she'll avoid proving anything as long as she can." I knew he was right. Melissa always gravitated toward what benefited her, not what was true. As I stood to leave, Larry said something that lingered with me all day. "Carter, unstable people cling to the past because they're terrified of the future, but don't let her drag you backward. Not when you're building something real." I nodded, absorbing the weight of those words, because for the first time in years, I was building something real. 3 days passed. No Melissa. Then came the knock. At 8:47 p.m., when Rebecca and I were watching an old movie on the couch, Someone hammered on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Max immediately shot up, barking uncontrollably, his body rigid with alarm. Rebecca stiffened beside me. "Stay here," I said, already rising. I didn't know who I expected, Melissa or someone worse. I opened the door just a crack. 2 officers stood there, a man and a woman, uniforms crisp, expressions neutral, but alert. "Evening, sir," the male officer said. "Are you Carter Wallace?" "Yes." "We need to speak with you regarding an incident involving your ex-wife, Melissa Turner." My stomach tightened, but I kept my voice steady. "What incident?" "She reported that you authorized the towing of her vehicle with her inside. She's currently at the station." "Of course she was." The female officer continued. "We're not here to arrest you. We just need your statement." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me gently so Rebecca wouldn't overhear everything. "I have recordings," I began. "Messages, voicemails, photos of her trespassing, witnesses. She's been stalking me for over a week, refusing to leave my property. She attacked my girlfriend. I told her multiple times to leave before the towing happened." They exchanged a glance, the kind officers give each other when they hear something that aligns more with reality than the hysterical report they received. The male officer nodded. "That matches what her sister described when we contacted her. It's clear there's a pattern of unstable behavior." Then came the part I didn't expect. "We've detained her for the night," the female officer said. "She became combative at the station. She's been charged with disorderly conduct." I exhaled, tension slipping off my shoulders. "Will she be released tomorrow?" "Likely," the officer said. "But a restraining order would be advisable. It would help you if things escalate." "They already escalated," I muttered. "We can file the initial paperwork right now." I agreed. 10 minutes later, after a flurry of signatures and dates, the officers left. The porch light cast a warm glow on the new documents in my hands, a protective order against Melissa Turner. It felt surreal, like a chapter closing. But the next chapter was waiting just behind the door. When I stepped inside, Rebecca stood in the hallway, clutching her sweater. "What happened?" she asked. "Melissa got herself arrested." Rebecca blinked. "Arrested? For what?" "Disorderly conduct, and she reported the towing incident. But the officers took my statement. I'm in the clear." She looked relieved for about 2 seconds before another thought hit her. "And the pregnancy?" "She brought it up again at the station," I said. "They mentioned she told them she's expecting, but it doesn't change anything right now." Rebecca pulled her hair back, the anxiety sharp in her expression. "If she is pregnant," she said slowly, "it would mean she'll never leave your life." I reached out, cupping her cheek gently. "I don't think she is, but if she is, we'll handle it. Together." Rebecca nodded, but the tremor in her voice remained. 2 mornings later, I got another visitor. Not Melissa. Annabelle again. She stood at my porch with her jacket half zipped, hair unbrushed, looking like she hadn't slept since the police took Melissa in. "Carter," she said, "please don't close the door. This will only take a second." I hesitated, then stepped outside. "She wants to talk to you," Annabelle said immediately. "She's begging. She says it's about the baby." I shook my head. "No." "I know you're angry," she said, her voice cracking. "I know she was horrible to you, but she's falling apart. She lost everything. Dad's business is collapsing. Mom's in therapy. Melissa has no money, no job, and now she's under a restraining order. She's not thinking clearly. "Annabelle," I said gently, "that's not my responsibility." Her eyes filled with tears. "I keep telling her she's pushing you further away, but she won't listen unless she talks to you." "She already talked," I said. "She screamed. She attacked Rebecca. She stalked my house. She lied about the pregnancy. She is pregnant." The words fell from Annabelle's lips like stones. My jaw tightened. "I don't believe her," I said. "She showed me the test," Annabelle whispered. "2 tests, and she's making a doctor's appointment. Carter, she thinks it's yours." For a long moment, I said nothing at all. Rebecca's fear surged back into my mind. The way Melissa had clung to me, the timing, the chaos. Finally, I took a deep breath. "If she wants me involved," I said, "she'll have to prove it." Annabelle nodded, defeated. "I'll tell her." As she turned to leave, she added softly, "For what it's worth, I'm sorry for everything she put you through." After she left, I stood on the porch for a full minute, absorbing the implications. A pregnancy, a restraining order, a court battle, a new life with Rebecca in the middle of all of it, and a storm building quietly at the edges of everything I'd rebuilt. That night, Melissa sent one final message. It wasn't angry. It wasn't manipulative. It was just one sentence. "We need to talk about our child." I stared at it for a long time. Then I put my phone down. Because tomorrow things were going to change. Again. Whether I was ready or not, I didn't sleep much that night. Melissa's last message, "We need to talk about our child," sat in my mind like a weight pressing down on my chest. Not because I believed her, but because I knew how far she would go to convince me. By the time dawn slipped through the blinds, I had already made up my mind. It was time to confront the truth. Whatever it was. Rebecca came into the kitchen while I was pouring coffee. Her hair was messy from sleep, her eyes soft but wary. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, sensing the heaviness in the room. "Is it because of her?" "Yes." Rebecca came closer and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Whatever happens, I'm with you. You know that, right?" I kissed her forehead. "I know." But the truth was, I had no idea how this would end, or how much more Melissa would try to claw her way back into my life. Around noon, I drove to Larry's office. He took one look at my face and sighed. "She's still pushing the pregnancy angle, isn't she? She says she's making a doctor appointment." Larry leaned back, tapping his fingers on the desk. "Then we let her. After that, we file for a paternity test. Court-ordered. No tricks, no emotional manipulation. Facts. And if she refuses, then she's lying. And if she's not lying?" Larry paused. "Then you prepare to co-parent. But that's the worst-case scenario." I nodded slowly. "I'll let you know what she does," I said. But I didn't have to wait long. Melissa reached out that same evening, calling from an unknown number. I answered only because ignoring her hadn't stopped anything before. "Carter?" Her voice was small, fragile. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want?" "I saw a doctor today," she said quickly. "I can send you the paperwork." "Send it to Larry," I said. "He'll handle it." A shaky breath. "Can't we just talk? Just you and me?" "No," she sniffled, a wet, broken sound. "I'm scared. I don't know what to do. You're the only person I—" "Stop," I said, sharply. "Don't pretend I'm your safe place. You destroyed that." "I made mistakes." "You destroyed everything." Silence. Then, "Maybe I deserve that," she whispered. "But the baby doesn't." I shut my eyes. "Send the paperwork," I repeated. "That's all I'll say." She was quiet for a moment. Then she hung up. I set the phone down on the table and exhaled hard. It was exhausting, being dragged back into her chaos again and again. But at least now it felt like there was a process, a direction, a plan. 2 days later, everything changed. Not because of Melissa, but because of what she did next. I was on the back porch working on a cabinet when I heard a car screech to a stop out front. Max started barking wildly. Before I could react, I heard a familiar voice screaming, "Carter! Open the door right now!" Melissa. Again. I rushed around the house and found her pounding on my front door, hair disheveled, eyes swollen and wild. "Melissa, stop!" She spun toward me, tears streaking down her cheeks. "He left me," she wailed. "Ronan left. My father's going to prison. And Annabelle says you don't care about me at all." "Because I don't," I said. "You need help, but not from me." She shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. I need you. I need you." Before I could react, she tried pushing past me, trying to get inside the house. "Where is she?" she screamed. "Where is that bitch? Did she take my place in my home?" "Melissa, stop!" I grabbed her arms and pushed her back. "You're not coming in." "Let me see her. Let me see Rebecca." "Absolutely not." She shoved me with surprising strength, trying to claw her way around me. Max barked like he was ready to rip through the door. Melissa was shaking uncontrollably. "I can't lose everything. I can't be alone. You're the only one who ever—" "That's enough," I said, stepping between her and the door. "If you don't leave right now, I'm calling—" "No!" she screamed. "You can't keep doing this. I'm carrying your—" "Last warning," I snapped. "Leave. Now." Something in my tone must have reached her, because she froze, tears dripping down her cheeks, breath sharp and uneven. For a moment, she looked less like the woman who betrayed me, and more like someone who had simply run out of floor to stand on. But only for a moment. Then she whispered, "You'll regret this," and she stormed off down the driveway. I thought that was it. I thought she had finally accepted reality. I was wrong. 10 minutes later, a different car rolled up, stopping in the middle of the street. 2 police cruisers, lights flashing silently. Rebecca came running to my side as 3 officers stepped out. One of them pointed at Melissa, who was pacing in the street, sobbing hysterically. "Ma'am, stay where you are." What's happening?" Rebecca whispered. I didn't have an answer. 2 officers surrounded Melissa, speaking calmly, professionally. But Melissa's panic had escalated into full-blown hysteria. "He's keeping my baby away from me," she screamed. "He stole my car. He pushed me. He's abusing me." The officer closest to her spoke quietly, trying to de-escalate, but Melissa kept screaming. Finally, the female officer took a slow step forward. "Melissa Turner, you're under arrest for violating a protective order." Melissa froze. "What?" "You are legally prohibited from coming within 200 feet of this residence," the officer continued. "You were informed of this 2 days ago. You are in violation of the court order." Melissa stumbled backward, shaking her head, breath hitching. No, he can't do this to me. This is his fault. He did this." 2 officers moved in and gently but firmly restrained her arms. Her voice broke into hysterical sobs. "Please, I'm pregnant. "If you need medical attention," the female officer said calmly, "we will take you to the hospital after booking." Melissa looked over her shoulder at me, eyes wild, pleading, drowning. "Carter," she begged, "please don't let them take me. I'm carrying your child. Please. But there was nothing left to say, nothing left to fix. Her choices, all of them, had led her here. And for once, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction, just sadness, a quiet, heavy sadness. They placed her in the back of the cruiser. She kept crying until the door shut, muffling the sound. Then the cars drove away, lights fading, street silent, and Melissa was gone. For real this time. Rebecca exhaled shakily beside me. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." But I wasn't entirely sure, because one question still hung over us. What if Melissa was telling the truth? The next day, Larry called with the answer. "Good news," he said. "The hospital did a preliminary test." My heart stopped. "And? She's not pregnant." I closed my eyes. The final thread snapped. "That means," Larry continued, "she lied to you again. The restraining order is permanent. You're officially free." "Thank you," I whispered. "Carter," he said, voice gentler than usual. "Go live your life. You've earned it." That evening I sat on my porch with Rebecca and Max while the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long golden shadows across the yard. For the first time in months, I felt no tension, no fear, no ghost of Melissa hovering at the edges of my life. Rebecca rested her head on my shoulder. Max lay at our feet, snoring softly. The breeze was warm. The world was still. And I finally felt the one thing I hadn't felt since before that birthday party. Peace. Melissa's betrayal had been the spark. But my revenge wasn't the documents, or the tow truck, or the restraining order. My revenge was this moment, my freedom, my new life, and the calm certainty that she no longer had the power to break me. Not now. Not ever again. The conflict was over, and I won.